Dancing with the Stars was its whole other, that was an experience. That was a test of strength and willpower. I think the biggest thing for me was when I won Best Electronic Album at the Billboard Awards against people I really respected.
I got chills.
Like, I remember Skrillex was nominated for his album. I am set up to succeed, but in those other shows, like back in the day, you're not set up to succeed. You have to win them over, and that's really exhausting. I did play a prank on my dancers.
Hey.
You're like a one-man show. I love it.
Yeah.
I relate, and yeah, it's impressive.
Thanks.
It's also a lot to wear all the hats, and like it's a lot of pressure because you're like, I gotta make sure everything's right, and it's all on me. But
Well, that's what I would love to pick your brain about.
Oh, okay.
'Cause you are the curator of all your success, from music, wardrobe, directing. You really do it all.
I really try.
Because you feel like you want to?
I feel like at the beginning, it comes from a place of necessity. Like when you're first starting, you kind of realize that like all these things you want to do, I've got to figure it out because you can't afford the help. And then as I've grown as an artist, it's been so nice to be able to hand off certain things that like really don't interest me at all and hand those away. But then it's like all these things that I've learned to do and that I've gained like passion in. It's like you almost don't want to give those up. It becomes a part of your craft. It's part of the joy. It's part of, I love not only, the results, but I love the creative process. That's one of the things that makes me come alive the most as an artist. So it's really hard for me to be like, well, I don't want to give up the editing, or I actually went to film school. I don't want to give up the directing part. Like, that's so fun for me. Like costuming, I've been making costumes since I was a kid. I'm like, I don't want to give that up. So it's like, it's kind of all of my interests I've tried to hold on to.
What was one of the first things that you took on yourself that you were happy to pass off?
Oh, anything business-wise or like...
You're the creative soul.
I am. And it's funny how I joke often that like, heaven forbid all of this crumpled one day and I have to be a functioning human in normal life. Like, the amount of times I'm like, anytime I go to a doctor, I'm hitting up my business manager being like, I'm sorry, what's my insurance information? I got like one time someone hit me and I was like, I can't find the insurance card in my car. And she's like, don't worry, it's there. So anything that's like normal life, functioning human, can't handle.
Where do you try and like push your energy towards the most?
You know, I have to focus and push my energy the most in order to like do the tasks, or I guess the skills, like the things that nobody else can do. I have to put energy into being like, you better freaking practice your aerial routine and go to the rehearsal, and you better practice that violin and dancing at the same time, that part of the song that's really difficult. That's where I have to put my energy and focus, because that honestly isn't the fun stuff. It's the like, that's when you have to show up and work and you're tired and your body is like, I don't want to do it anymore, I want to sit down. I don't have to put much like physical like time into like making a costume, because that's like the end of the day when I can't practice anymore and I get to turn off my brain and just like rhinestone something. Like I don't have to like set aside time for that, because that's like, oh, I finally get to do that. I finally get to just sit down and turn off my brain and work on this like it's almost meditative for me to do that kind of stuff.
Right. You mentioned the aerial.
Yeah.
What made you want to get into that? Because I feel like your show is already so intricate. So you're adding just another level of showdom to it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've always loved the aerial arts. Like I remember watching like the PBS special of Cirque du Soleil when I was a kid and just being like mesmerized by it. And like, it was such another world. But then I remember the world kind of combined for me when I went to a Pink show, and suddenly you're like, well, like the circus is one thing, Cirque du Soleil, but seeing like an artist that feels very relatable, even though she's like otherworldly as well. But it made me be like, like this does feel like it's something I could try. And it was actually in the pandemic that I kind of started to dabble in it. I was stuck at home, and I used my, like, there was like a swing set in my backyard that I attached a hoop to.
That's how you started.
Like I just started in my own backyard, actually with hair hanging, which is absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, that led me to like realize there was all kinds of apparatuses in such a world. And it's been so empowering because I don't know, I spent too much of my life wanting to be small. And that came from a really unhealthy place of like, being stuck in, like, this is a whole nother can of worms, but being stuck in anorexia for years and realizing that I was obsessed with almost wanting to disappear and be tiny. That's all, like, that's what I thought I needed to be for the world. And so then to heal that part of my brain and my mind and my body connection was quite a process. And then to, for the first time ever, really see my body as like, I actually want to be focused on what it can do. And I want to be strong enough to be able to lift myself, and seeing my body as this tool of what it can do rather than what I felt it needed to be, focusing on being strong and fit rather than working out to be tiny. Like, it was a whole different mindset that was actually incredibly empowering and healing for me in my relationship with my body, that it was like a byproduct of wanting to put on a cool show that I didn't know that would do so much for me on a personal level.
When did you start to really get the hang of it that you felt comfortable doing it in front of an audience?
It was in, I believe it was Christmas of 2022 was when we really started to be like, or maybe actually it was 2021. I think it was 2021. And I will say, my dancers and they saw me starting to train, and two of them came to me and they're like, would you want us to go up in the air too? So it was really fun to get to not only train by my, for my own act, but then to be like, oh, I've got my girls with me. Like, we're doing this together. And I'm so glad I had that, because it was this sense of every night when those hoops would come down. The first tour was actually quite scary because we were baby aerialists. We weren't very we were new at it. And so to do it in front of an audience, I remember every night as those hoops would come down and we'd grab them, we'd like look side to side at each other like, you got this, girl. Okay. Like, and having that sisterhood really was like quite helpful to me, especially because that first time we did it on tour, we'd only been training for about 3 months.
Wow.
So it was a little scary.
Did Caitlin Rogers ever do it?
Yeah, she was one of them.
Oh, she was on my podcast.
Oh my gosh.
She's the best.
I love Caitlin. Yeah, she was one of my girls for years. Like, I think she toured with me for like 4 or 5 years. And yeah, she's incredible.
And she's on Dancing with the Stars now.
She's on Dancing with the Stars, which I'm so proud of her. Like, because I remember her talking about that and it being a goal for her. And then she was brave enough to come to me and say, it's, time for me to leave a for sure thing in order to chase something that I don't actually know if it's going to happen, but she had to be available. Sometimes you have to jump into the unknown to give space to see if you'll be able to catch what you want. And so she like left for our tour with it was like really sad, but I was so happy for her. But to see her like land in Dancing with the Stars after making that space was like incredible.
What's up, guys? Real quick, this episode is sponsored by Liquid IV. As summer days are getting hotter, you gotta stay hydrated, and that's where I use Liquid IV. Whether I'm going to the beach or hitting a music festival, I always make sure to carry a pack of it with me. There's also an incredible flavor I want to tell you about, the Orange Vanilla Dream Hydration Multiplier from Liquid IV. It's a nostalgic vanilla flavor with notes of candied orange that can help you stay more hydrated than just water alone. So visit liquidiv.com and use code LIGHTWEIGHT at checkout for 20% off your first order. Liquid IV is scientifically formulated to help replenish electrolytes and fluids lost from sweat and exercise. It has 3 times electrolytes of the leading sports drink, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients, all in a single stick. It's got 100% of the daily 4 essential B vitamins, B3, 5, 6, and 12. Plus, it's an excellent source of vitamin C. So savor the last bits of summer with Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code LIGHTWEIGHT at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code LIGHTWEIGHT at checkout. Stay hydrated, friends. We'll go into Dancing with the Stars in a little bit, but speaking of jumping into things of the unknown, was there something that was really challenging for you that you didn't know it was going to pay off, but you still wanted to give it a shot?
Yeah. I mean, so many examples, but the one that really comes to mind is I feel like it's always those first ones that are the scariest, because now if I take a risk, like, I don't know, like I have enough to fall back on to realize like I'm not going to lose it all, most likely if I try risk. But I remember, gosh, when I think the biggest risk I ever took was when I put on my first ever show. Because I had to hire a band. I flew them all to New York City.
Are you doing this all yourself?
Doing this all myself.
So crazy.
And like, I didn't have a label. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have anybody. It was literally, I had started a YouTube channel and I didn't even know if I could sell tickets. But there was a booker that was willing to book me, and he was in New York City at Webster Hall. And so I remember being like, oh my gosh, I flew out. I found a band, flew them to New York City, rented a rehearsal space, rented all the gear. I think I got paid like $1,000 or $1,500 to do the show. It cost me like over $10,000 to put it on and to do all the rehearsals and to get like, because I'd never done a show before, so it took quite a lot to get that first show. And this was my hope of getting a manager and a booking agent and, you know, and trying to invite people to the show. I didn't even know if the tickets would sell.
How'd you go about getting people there?
Well, luckily I had a YouTube channel that was doing well, but there's always that question of like, well, they'll show up to click on a video, but will they leave their house to come see me? Are any of them even near New York? I don't know. But luckily that show sold out. Several booking agents came. I got one from the that booked me after that. And so it was this huge risk at the time. $10,000 was like a lot of what I had. I didn't really have much outside of that. And so it was like that big first jump really paid off. I booked a tour from that show and, you know, the rest is history. I'm now like, because for me, the goal was always not just to create like music or have, being an influencer was not even really a thing back then. But for me, it was always like, I want to put on a show. So I'm going to put my eggs in that basket and I'm going to go for it. And even though it doesn't seem like a lot now, that was a huge, scary risk at the time.
That sounds like a huge, scary risk. That at that time, too, no one was really breaking from YouTube like that.
Right. There wasn't any case studies of like, oh, yeah, if you go on, you know, these social media platforms, it leads to outside success. It was very contained in the world of like YouTubers were YouTubers.
And that was it.
And they collaborated in the YouTube world. They didn't leave much. Yeah. There were YouTube events, there were YouTube meetups, but there wasn't like, they didn't really do live shows. So it was a big experiment and I'm so grateful that I did it because like touring is my favorite part of my business and it's something, and you know, people sometimes ask me like, how did you make that crossover? And I'm like, well, I did it really early from the very beginning. As soon as I felt like I could put on a show, I did it. I went for it. I jumped. And now it's like I said, a built-in part of my brand because it grew as my channel grew, the touring grew at the same time. And I'm so grateful I did that.
In those days, in like the pie chart of it all, how much percent was live shows versus like you wanted to make your own music versus other avenues you wanted to explore? Was it mostly live show? Like that was your main thing?
That was always that, you know, it's funny. That was always the goal. At first, it was all about making the videos and making the music because that was what I was working to. And you had to have, but I knew you had to have fans. In order to get fans, you had to make the music, but I didn't want to just do covers. And so I was like really intentional on doing like back and forth between a cover and an original. And so it was like, but to me, whenever I was writing music, the goal was always like, I want to write music that will be really fun to perform live. I want to build this channel and make content that showcases that I can actually perform live. Like, so that was always the bait, was all this other stuff, but the goal was always the live show.
So impressive.
So it was fun, you know. I guess having like a goal made me know where I wanted to put my energy and that I wanted to practice dancing. I needed to get better, you know.
So once you did that live show, your very first one, were you building out the team, kind of following the steps of other artists, getting your manager and trying to figure it out from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was like, I know these are things I need. So like, let's figure it out. And, you know, as I was building this team, I just feel like I was very led and guided. Like I'm a big believer in God and that there's, you know, that we get help from the other side. And I was really like prayerful as I was going through all of these processes of like, I don't know what to do. Like, because I had read this book that was like how to make it in the music industry. And this was right before I started my YouTube channel. And I remember being very discouraged by it, realizing that like the things it laid out, I just couldn't do. I didn't have the resources and I didn't have the money to follow the anything that I had researched. But also this was at the emergence of YouTube. And so it was, I started to realize that actually there are no rules, but yet there's still those key things from like this research I'd done that you still need. I need a manager. I need a booking agent. I need a lawyer. And so following that, but I'm so grateful that the team that I built back in the day, so many of these people are still with me. Like the drummer I randomly hired for that first gig, he's still my drummer to this day, 15 years or 13 years later. You know, my manager I've had for 10 years plus. My lawyer, same lawyer from day one. Like I'm just really lucky that I was led to good people and that we've been able to make it work together through the years.
What made you recognize the power of posting your videos online, that people would show up? Like, did you feel that you were onto something? Where people in your close circle being like, is YouTube really a thing? Like, what are you doing?
I mean, I quickly became aware of the power of YouTube. I'm so grateful. Again, people being led to you, is, I feel like, such a thing, and kind of trusting your own instinct of when something feels right. And I remember, right about the time that I had read that book, and I was so discouraged, being like, I am never going to make it, like, because I can't do what this book is saying, and like the formula is not going to work for me. Someone had reached out. His name was Devin Supertramp. That was his YouTube channel name. And I don't even remember how he reached out to me, because I didn't really have a YouTube channel yet, but he contacted me and told me, I'm teaching a YouTube workshop in Provo, Utah. And that's where I lived. And he's like, I want to show people how to be YouTubers. And I was like, what do you mean a YouTube? It didn't even clock what that was, but I was intrigued enough. I remember I even had plans that night, but I changed my plans to go to this YouTube workshop that he was teaching. And I remember as I sat in that room with everything inside of me, even though I'd never heard of like any of these YouTubers he was talking about, I knew this was it. In my mind, I was like, this is it. And I remember I even called my mom after the class. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. And I started my YouTube channel literally the next day, like in terms of planning content and being like, I'm going to chase this with everything I've got and throw all my eggs in this basket. Because I had been throwing my eggs in different baskets. I had auditioned for America's Got Talent at that point and gotten decently far on it. It was a dead end. I was playing gigs at colleges. Like I'd done college showcases and was playing like literally at like all over the place in college events and cafeterias and little parties on campuses.
Those are pretty well paying though for the circuit, right? The college circuit?
Yeah, they definitely that's how I paid for my first album. And that's how I earned that money to be able to invest in that first show, was through playing college showcases. I had realized they probably weren't going to get me to a place where anyone cared who I was. You know what I mean? They were a paycheck, but nobody was coming up to me afterwards being like, I want your album. Like, it's kind of like your music wallpaper.
Do people come to your shows now that are like, I saw you at my college back then?
I've had like a few people say that, and I always just want to give them like the biggest kiss, just to be like, oh my gosh, thank you for showing that you cared back in the day when no one else did, and that you apparently saw something in me. Like, so, it is really cool when someone can catch your potential when you're in a really unshiny situation. Like some of these times I'd literally be playing in college campus cafeterias during lunch, and so like with a bad sound system, like with my iPod. And so if someone can see your potential in a moment like that, when the world isn't telling them that you're awesome and shiny, like it's a lot easier to shine when you're on a stage and you've got dancers and lights, and it's like everything is set up to make you seem extra special, but when that's not there and someone can still see you, it's pretty cool.
What was your attitude when you were going to that cafeteria? Were you psyched?
It was more like psych yourself up, because like I said, it's not a situation that makes you feel or look like a superstar. It's more like, I have to try to convince these people, or this situation, that I am worth listening to, as they're just trying to go about their day, and I'm here at the side playing. And so sometimes it felt pretty thankless, if I'm being honest. But I feel like that's what it takes in the beginning days, is you have to do so many thankless gigs that don't make you feel special, that leave you almost feeling more depleted than fulfilled. And those are the things that, like, one, hone your craft as a performer, of trying to almost like fight an uphill battle in a performance setting, so that, like, now when I walk on stage, it's not an uphill battle. I'm like, people bought a ticket to see me. They're excited. They spent their whole day getting ready for this event, and they bought their tickets months ago. I am set up to succeed. But in those other shows, like back in the day, you're not set up to succeed. You have to win them over. And that's really exhausting. And like I said, thankless oftentimes. And you have to like go back to your hotel room and just be like, is this worth it? And decide almost every time, like, is it still worth it? And thankfully, I was able to be like, yes, it's worth it, for long enough. But definitely there was a time when I was like, it's not worth it. But I think that I'm so grateful that my inner gut was like, keep going a little bit farther.
Did you almost throw in the towel?
Several times, yeah. Because you just are tired. You're exhausted. No one cares. Like, no one's listening. And like that is pretty discouraging, when you kind of feel like you're just not making any progress. And also for me, the hardest thing was that it was exhausting, but it was lonely.
Because
It's
You
just
didn't
me.
have the band on.
Didn't have a band. I didn't have a manager. Like, I would just basically return to college and like try to keep up with all my school work and everything, and try to see some of my friends. Like, but then on the weekends I'd go fly off to some random city, play for some people, go back to my hotel room by myself, rent a car by myself, drive. It was just very, very lonely, spending all your free time on this like thing by yourself. And now it's like I have a community of people, I have a family I tour with, but I remember just being like, I don't know how much longer I could do this by myself. I'm an extrovert. I feed off of the energy of close people, not just random people, but like close people. And so I think that's the thing that almost made me throw in the towel multiple times. I can take rejection, I can take hard work, but I couldn't take the loneliness for much longer.
How many years of loneliness would you say there was?
I would say it wasn't even that long. It was probably like a year and a half of doing it by myself, hardcore, with that exhausting, just flying everywhere by myself.
Right.
And that does seem like a long time. It doesn't seem like a long time, but it was.
Well, those flights are long, and you're just going there, and you're picking up the car by yourself, and you're going there by yourself. It is.
You're just like, how much longer can I do this? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Being a pioneer, what was the toughest door that you kicked down that you were so proud that you did?
Toughest door I kicked down, I would say it was just making that crossover from YouTuber to a live performer that like really could sell tickets. But actually, we've already talked about that. I think the biggest thing for me was when I won Best Electronic Album at the Billboard Awards against people I really respected.
I got chills.
Like, I remember Skrillex was nominated for his album, Zed was nominated for his album, and Kygo was nominated for his album. These were all people that had inspired me incredibly as an artist to like pave my own way, as well as people that I'd wanted so badly to collaborate with. Some of them had said no, and that's fine. Everybody's allowed to say that. But so then to be nominated in a category with them, I won't even say which one, I met one of, I'll say it's not even bad. I met Kygo on the red carpet and I was all excited. I ran up and said hi, and I could tell he had no idea who I was and was just, he was nice and just like, oh, nice to meet you. And, and then later that afternoon, I beat him for the Best Electronic Album. And I think then he knew who I was after that. He's like, is that girl I met on the red carpet? But that was just a very humbling, exciting moment to be like, I'm just a little YouTube gal and I just did it.
That's such a moment.
Yeah, it was a big moment for me.
Do you write with intentions of the song being performed live? Like when you're writing, you're like, oh, I know where I can be on stage for this part of the song, and then I can have the dancers do this. Is that going through your mind when you're writing?
Sometimes it's like story based. Like I think of like what I want the music video to be, and
that complex.
Yeah, sometimes, not always, but sometimes like when I'm writing, I get really specific ideas of like, oh my gosh, I feel the world here. I know where I want this to go. But I will say on stage is always like a thought of like, yeah, does this make me feel inspired? Would I want to like make a show with this? Would this even make the set? And oftentimes that delineates like, actually, if this wouldn't even make the set, why would I want it?
Oh, is it hard to create a set list now for you?
It's getting harder and harder every tour because you get more and more little babies that you love with each album. You get more favorites, and it's always this kind of battle between like, oh, these are the fan favorites that I know the fans will be really stoked about. But like, I feel like most artists will always love their most recent work because it's the most true to who you are in the moment. It's your current self in expression, and it's your current musical interests there. So you have to balance between like, oh, these are the songs I'm super excited about, but also like, I got to do these ones that the fans really, really need to hear and have to hear, So it's always a balance.
Who are some of your biggest inspirations for live performances?
Pink, for sure, is my biggest inspiration for live performances. Not only just her aerial work, but I feel like when I go to a Pink show, like I want to know her more, because she shares all these different parts of herself. And so I think that's such an important thing as an artist to be like, what do you want them to see of you? And how are you going to show, like, you know, she shares like inspirational things. She shares just pure entertainment. She shares fun. She shares wild, like, I'm just going to let it all out there and I don't care what anybody thinks. And then she shows strength. Like when I leave a Pink show, I just want to be strong. I want to be sure of myself. I want to have opinions. So when I create a show, I oftentimes I'm like, I just want the Pink formula. You know, like I want to hit all those different beats.
Where do you think the magic in your show lies?
I mean, I think it lies in, I really hope that people, when they come to my show, through like the vulnerability I share and through the things I talk about or the things that the voiceovers, like whatever it is, I hope the things that I share really remind people that I am like actually just like every single one of you. I am not this like other being, you know, like sometimes like when you see Beyonce on stage, like she's Beyonce, she's not actually human. Nobody can be like her. And I really want to remind people that like, I'm just a normal gal. Like I have insecurities. I have this, I have that. But at the same time, they get to watch me do some pretty fantastical things. And they get to see me up in the air and like spinning and playing the violin and dancing. And, you know, so like this free spirited version of myself. But I also want them to realize that like, I'm just a normal person. So like they can walk away being like, heck, I can do the things I want to do. Like, that's what I always hope people leave feeling is super empowered, they can be whatever version of magical self they want to be.
When you get off stage, would you say you're critical of yourself?
I'm getting so much better at that.
Do you think you need to be?
Well, I used to be hypercritical of myself to the point where like, it's like it got worse and worse and worse for a time until like literally I'd walk off stage like multiple nights a week and I would just go in my room and I'd close the door and I'd cry because I was so sure that like everybody was so disappointed they came. And I was just like, everybody now knows that I'm like not good enough and that I'm really not a good performer. Like makes me emotional just thinking about it because I was so mean to myself. And you know, there's a part of you that thinks that if you're hard on yourself, you'll do better because it's like, I know that I expect more, so I'm going to show up tomorrow and be better. But like, it's actually this downward spiral. And the harder I was on myself, the more I would carry this, like the fear, and it would compound. And like, I'd walk onto stage with fear of like worrying about what the audience is going to think and if I'm enough. And like, thankfully to therapy, one day my therapist was just like, she basically told me like, you're missing your dream. Like, isn't this what you always dreamed of? Like, are you? And I was like, yeah, I'm living my dream. And she's like, well, you're missing it because every night you're going on stage and you're afraid. And she helped me switch my mindset from like, what are they going to think of me, to like, hey, I just get to give like a gift. Everybody gets to give a gift in life. Everybody gets to show up in life to the people they love or the people they meet and interact with. And you get to give a gift of yourself and your intention. And so when I walk on stage now, if I start to feel that fear compiling, I literally like remind myself like, nope, focus on love. Every night before I go on stage, I visualize my heart glowing and getting brighter and brighter. And I imagine, I like look at the venue before, and then I imagine that glow going across the audience and like filling that specific room with light, because that's something I can focus on what I give. I can't focus on what I receive. I can't actually control what the audience thinks of me. And I'll never actually even know what they think of me. It's all me making up what I think they think of me. And so all I can do is go out there and be like, I'm going to give a gift. I'm going to give my love. I'm going to give my heart. And that way, when I get off stage, I know I gave everything I have. And if it wasn't perfect, which it will never be, I don't allow myself to close my door anymore, because if I'm going to have a moment, I'm not going to isolate. Like my crew, my dancers, they can see, and it allows me to not spiral. And if I'm really upset with, like, everybody has bad performances, I just don't allow it to come on the bus with me. It has to stay in the venue. Like, I deal with it, maybe have a little bit of a moment, frustration, talk with my drummer about it. We chat, and then I leave it there. I don't let it follow me. I don't let it compound from show to show.
Did that standard transfer to other avenues like Dancing with the Stars?
Honestly, I feel like it came after Dancing with the Stars. It's been I feel like it was actually after COVID that I kind of had that like really dip, and then had to be like, we got to figure out how to turn this around. But yeah, Dancing with the Stars was its whole other, that was an experience. That was a test of strength and willpower. Like, I don't think I've ever quite had to test myself.
Yeah. What'd you think when you first found out you were going to be partnered with Mark?
Oh, I was so excited. I mean, Mark is literally, I think, the most creative person that has ever been on the show in terms of the choreographers. So I was so excited to be paired with such a genius.
Did you learn anything from him that you applied to your own shows?
I mean, absolutely. I just feel like you meet people that think creatively similar to you sometimes. And I feel like Mark is one of those people. I loved watching him create in the moment, like watching his mind almost like firing and being like, oh, he's thinking of something, and like what's going to happen, and like being able to brainstorm with him was just so fun. But I think together, honestly, we just we learned a whole nother level of work ethic. And I will say it's a little bit of a feather in my cap that, for better or for worse, he did tell me that was the hardest season he had ever done. And I was his second to last partner. So who knows, maybe his last season was even harder, but it was because of all the travel we were doing, and we were touring at the same time. And so I was bouncing back and forth from a tour to the show. We would rehearse in the morning. We'd rehearse after our shows. So it was a lot, but it was an experience I will always be so grateful for. And I will say it made me such a better performer. Like, it really honed my skills as a dancer in a way that I'm forever grateful for.
Did the crowd there teach you anything about your own crowds, of how to perform in front of them?
I will say, I mean, TV crowds are so different than like an audience crowd. One, because there's like a person off to the side being like, clap, clap, clap. Like, yeah, everybody on your feet. Like,
that was great, right?
Yeah. And instead of you as the artist having it always on you to be like the master of the situation, having like a hype person like between commercial breaks was great. But I don't know. I was just so inspired by the whole experience, seeing how the TV world works and the creativity that went into all of these different numbers, and kind of taking a bit of that into my own shows of like, I learned so much working with the costume team, working with the producers, and just seeing how they crafted a live show. And I think there's always something to be gleaned from that. Like, I creative direct all my own shows, and I think they made me think about color in a whole new way. Just the way that, like, for example, when the costumers, would come in and we'd talk about what I wanted to wear that week, and you kind of got to design it with them, and they'd be like, no, we can't do purple because Whitney's wearing purple, and it was like, oh, color is such an important part of storytelling and identifying moments, so they kind of helped me, like, even something as simple as color or the style of music and the flow, the way they'd orchestrate a show was also gearing towards how they wanted the arc of the feeling to be through that episode. So, there's just something always to be gleaned from these experts of like entertainment.
I feel like it just opens up your creativity more on the playground to figure out what you want to do, from even like album covers to your performances now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's so cool. Do you have any pre-show rituals before you go out there now to really lock in and make sure that the crowd gets what you want them to feel?
Yeah, I mean, I do breath work before I go out on stage. One, because there's like, breath work is so cool. There's so much science behind it. Like, it's often termed as like a woo-woo thing, but there's so much science behind it that you actually, through oxygen and through breath patterns, you actually reset your nerves. Like, your nervous system and the nerves, when they start to get heightened through like being a little bit afraid or like that anxiety or the anxiousness, which is excitement, you can reset it through breath, where your nerves actually that contraction will decrease. And so it's actually been so great for me, especially like the amount I have to use my hands and physicality. Like, tight nerves are terrible. So it's been game changer for my mental health, but also just performing, to do breath work on a regular basis. And then I think I love that meditation of like visualizing my heart getting brighter and filling the audience. And if I ever start to feel in the middle of a show that I'm like, oh gosh, I'm messing up, and then you mess up again, and then you're like, no, I got to play better, and then you mess up again. My reset is like going back to that visual of seeing my heart and the audience, and it's like, I'm just here to give my heart to them. That's okay. So I can like kind of go back to that, to like even ground myself mid-show if I have a little bit of a moment.
Right. I know DJs sometimes have like hearing loss after so many shows. Do you have to do anything to make sure that your fingers are in great shape?
I mean, I do a lot of stretches to just, because as a violinist, too much of your life is spent hunched and clenched in, all of your positions are forward. So I do a lot of stuff to try to like reverse my hands, just, so those are just stretches I do. I did play a prank on my dancers. I think last tour or 2 tours ago. It was like I had a new set of dancers, so they didn't quite know all of the routines. And midway through the tour, I had my crew put up signs everywhere that just said hand rest day. And my dancers, when they woke up, I was already up and I had like socks on my hands, and everybody explained like, oh yeah, like vocalists have to go on vocal rest. Lindsey has to go on hand rest. So all day long I had them like doing everything for me, from making my morning protein shake to feeding me lunch. They like hand fed me. They were opening my doors, like just doing everything for me. And all the crew was in on the joke. And at the end of the day, I told them like,
what's their reaction to that?
Oh, they died. It was one of my favorite pranks I've ever pulled. But yeah, so now they still joke about hand rest day, and I'm like, maybe someday I'll need to get into that.
Is there like a post-show high? Like, what do you feel after you get off stage on a killer performance?
Oh, there's nothing like that feeling, especially having a team to share it with. Like, I think one of the biggest post-show highs that I've felt in a long time was after my team and we went to Lollapalooza in Paris, and we performed. Like, it was in front of like 50,000 people. And it was the first time at a festival that I've been able to do my whole bells and whistles show. Like, a lot of times at festivals, you just kind of have to be able to run on stage, run off. But this time we got to take like all of our aerial apparatuses and like, pyro into a festival. And it was, and all the costume changes. So just like the show that I love to do, taking it to Paris. But it was also such a crazy team effort. Like, it was a lot of like, divide and conquer, like all of us working on our different pieces to then meet in Paris and pray that the whole show worked together. And everyone had worked so hard on my team, from the dancers to the riggers. And I remember when we got off stage and it had just gone amazing. It was like that team high of like, not only am I proud of myself, we were all so proud of each other and each other's work and each other's focus. And, that was like, there's nothing like that feeling.
I feel like you're pretty rare where you try to keep the same dancers, the same crew all around you for each of your tours.
I really do. I mean, I don't know how rare that is, but I just personally feel so lucky that I have people that have been with me for, like I said, my drummer's been there, my tour manager and my lighting guy have been there for like 13 years.
So crazy.
And then we've got people who've been there for 10 years. And, even all my dancers right now, one of them's been with me for 8 years. And then the rest have been there for like 3 years. But I really do try to keep like a team feeling and a family feeling. And I think that's what, again, it goes back to that feeling of years ago when I was touring by myself and I was like, this is lonely. And even when you're touring with a big group of people, sometimes I've heard that can even be more lonely if you don't feel community, because then it's like you're invisible in a group, which is, I don't think there's anything more lonely than that. And so the fact that like I have family with me, and if you ever start to do, feel that loneliness, you can reach out to somebody and everybody knows that everybody's there for each other.
How do you create that staying power in the music industry?
I think from the very beginning, it was really important for me. Well, one, I think because I knew what it felt like to be lonely, and I'm a homebody, and I wasn't sure if I was going to I knew I'd like performing. I didn't know if I'd love touring. So I was like, I need to make this feel like home. I need to make this feel like family. And so very quickly, like I never wanted it to feel like artist and band or A party, B party, especially as the team has grown. I know a lot of camps run like that, where there's A party, which is like band and dancers, and then crew is B party. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's an organizational thing, but it can sometimes turn into two different cultures or two different hierarchies feeling. From what I've heard. And I just never wanted that. I always wanted us to feel like the whole, like whether you are a rigger or whether you're a dancer, there's nobody that's more important, whether you're the artist, except I do get the room in the back of the bus. Okay. I will not give that up.
King size bed?
A king size bed. Okay. So I am a little spoiled, but at the same time, like I really wanted everyone from the beginning to feel like a family. And so it's just been really important to me from the beginning. And I think it was almost a survival tactic for myself so that I could feel like it was home. And it's just lasted through all the tours. And I think also having the same people for so long helps create a culture. Anytime new people come in, that they can feel there's already a culture that exists and you're welcome into it.
What's your favorite market to tour in?
France.
Why?
France adopted me from the very here I am in my beret.
I know. Very fitting.
Yeah, right? It's like I prepared for that question. But from the very beginning, I just feel like France really adopted me. And I've heard that that's, it's like, it's either you are or you aren't a French received artist.
Right.
Like they're a little bit like they're either going to cling on to you or they're like, no. And so from the very beginning, I just had amazing community in my French fans. And so I've always loved going there. And it's always been one of the most exuberant audiences for me. And I just love French pastries and cheese.
I bought a violin at the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh,
Couldn't figure it out.
it's an evil instrument, to be honest.
Did you have a teacher in the beginning when you first started?
Absolutely. I mean, I started when I was 6, so I had to have someone to like show me how to do it. But I will say, whenever people tell me they're starting the violin, I always highly recommend like get a teacher to at least get you the beginning ropes and get you a foundation. Then if you want to go off on your own, best of luck. But you kind of do need like someone to help. It's such a weird instrument to start.
Because I was self-taught on guitar and bass, and I figured I could figure it out. No frets. Don't know what I'm playing.
Yeah, and like even to make a nice sound on it,
It's just
is difficult. Like just to make a solid sound takes like a lot of practice.
Did you have inspirations when you were growing up of who you really liked as a violinist that was in the modern day?
A little bit. Like, I feel like it took till I was like in college, and that's when I started to discover more people that were like doing unique things with the violin and like playing electric violins. And, so it was, but when I was a kid, that wasn't really a thing yet. But I did love like fiddle music. I thought fiddle music was like the fun violin, and I played my classical because that's what you had to do and that's what my lessons were for. But when I would get to just have fun, it was fiddle music.
When did you really start to explore your own sound?
It's funny because it never really occurred to me much to explore my own sound until I was like in college. And it's because as a classical violinist or a classical anything, you think about even the like ballet, there's a right and a wrong way to do things. There's the way it's always been done. And you never even get to choose what you play. Like I never picked a piece to play. Like your teacher picks it for you. Your orchestra instructor picks what you play. You're told exactly how to play it. It's more about, at least for me, it felt very much more about like regurgitation and perfection, which I'm shocked I lasted as long, like all the way up through college and almost became a performance major. And it surprises me because I'm such a creative person and I thrive on that, the creative process. And so I think, I almost gave it up when I went to college because I just realized, I don't even like this anymore. It's not exciting. I was burnt out. And so instead of studying music, to be a classical performance major, I was like, I'm just going to make it fun. And then all of a sudden it was like, what does that even mean? What does that even look like as a violinist to like make it fun? Well, I guess I should decide what I want to play. What do I even like to play? I don't even know. It was like this whole new world of curiosity because I'd never even picked a piece to play before. Literally. So, I dabbled in a little bit of arranging, but that was it. So it was really fun to start to be like, I played with a country band for a little bit. I played with some indie folk artists. Like I started going to open mic nights. And if I heard an artist I liked, I would go up and I'd made a little business card and I'd give it to him and be like, if you ever want to play with a violinist or you need a violinist for a recording or you just call me, let me know. And some people took me up on it. So I just started to experiment and express myself, and it became this really fun journey that I think saved me as a violinist and as an artist and made it so I think I would have quit had I not done that.
Wow. What's your favorite score now?
Oh, from movies. Oh, yes, I do.
What blew you away?
I mean, I think one of the first scores that ever blew me away was Pirates of the Caribbean. Like as a teenager being like, I love that, I want to play that and like learned it on the violin. Now there's so many. How to Train Your Dragon is just one of the most beautiful. It's top of mind because it's new. It just came out again. I love Celtic music. So the Brave theme from Disney's Brave, so fun to play.
Have you ever done movie scores?
I've dabbled. No, not really. I've dabbled just a tiny bit. But it's something I would love to get into more.
That'd be so cool for you.
It'd be so fun.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians struggle to make ends meet, especially in the beginning of their career.
Yeah.
If you were to do it all over today, what do you think your path would be to try and make it successful where you can just do this full time?
So if I was starting today, because it's so funny, it's so different now even than when I started. Like, I don't know. I feel like the zeitgeist of social media is constantly changing. So it's always about just like paying attention and learning. And I mean, really, I think that my best advice for anybody who's like starting out as an artist is like, use the platforms that are here right now, but also keep your ear to the ground for the next one. Like, what's the next one that's emerging? And if you hear any whisperings of a new platform coming, get on there and like start experimenting on it, because the easiest way, like I was so fortunate that I caught the wave of YouTube as it exploded. I had just made a platform and like started getting fans, and I had a little community on this platform of YouTube, so that when YouTube blew up, I was on top of the wave, And so if I was starting now, that's what I would do. I'd be like, what's coming next? Like TikTok's got its thing. It's got its consistency already. It is what it is. So does Instagram. Any second now, there's going to be another one that pops up. And you better believe it, researching and trying to figure out what that next one is.
You're always on it.
Oh, no, but I try.
No, I mean, like, I feel like you're always on like the focus of it, which is incredible. So like when you lean into a trend and you hit it and it hits the algorithm and it blows up, do you feel like you see that surge of new people discovering your music and coming to your shows?
I feel like it's less about like one trend. It's literally about showing up over and 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 over, like showing up constantly, because like, yeah, and I think this was a really important thing that being on America's Got Talent taught me, was because at the time when I was on America's Got Talent, it was one of the biggest shows on network TV. Network TV was king. Like YouTube really wasn't even a thing quite yet. So literally that was the formula. One of the best ways to get launched was to go on one of these reality shows. And I remember I went on it. I made it all the way to the quarterfinals. People were all excited, and they were on my MySpace page, like commenting, and on my Facebook. I was gaining fans.
How many friends did you have at that point? Friends.
Right? They were friends.
They were friends.
Honestly, I think I had like, I want to say like 3,000, so like not a lot, but I was seeing it starting to grow while I was on the show. But the moment that the show ended, it was done. And everybody, it was almost like overnight they forgot. And I just remember being so discouraged, not only because I got kicked off and was kind of embarrassed, actually very embarrassed with like that it didn't go well for me. I got X'd. I got the whole like, it was an embarrassing experience that I'm very grateful for now. But also in that moment, I was so confused because I was like, I was seen by 11 million people a week ago, and now nobody cares. So is any of this worth it? I don't get it. What does make you what works if that didn't work? And so it taught me this valuable lesson. It's not about hitting a viral trend and everybody coming to see your show. It's not about having your moment on a talk show or a reality TV show or whatever. It's about showing up again and again and again. And it's like, I've had so many viral moments, that I've worked really hard for. I've had so many viral tanks, but it's like, I continue when I see something that's interesting to jump on it if I think it fits my brand, and if I'm like, this is a chance to go viral again, and sometimes they really hit, sometimes they don't, but like no 1, 2, 3, or 4 viral moments are going to make a career. It's consistency.
What did that resilience mean to you when you went back on that show?
Oh, that was a really cool full circle moment. The first time I went back to AGT, because I don't know, it was, like I said, I can't describe to you the feeling I had when I got kicked off the show. I was so humiliated. I was so discouraged.
Was that immediately when you watched, like, were you watching it live when it happened and that was your first take of it?
Well, it was live when I did it.
Oh.
So I was on stage, like facing the critique of these judges, knowing I had just kind of bombed my performance. Like I didn't do very well. And knowing that, walking up to that mic, knowing I'd gotten like X'd, and then being like listening to their feedback, and it was like humiliating critique of like, you sound like a bunch of rats being strangled, like you don't have what it takes, like, going backstage and being like, my family's all here, I don't even think I could face my family. Like I was so embarrassed. And coming off of that, to then buoy myself up again was just quite an experience of like resilience, and teaching myself that like, truly, do I believe that one moment defines me, or do I believe that I can get better, I can try again, and that maybe this one moment isn't everything. It was a huge learning experience for me.
Was there anything in the back of your mind that I have to get back on this stage and show them that I can do it? Like, was that a personal goal at all?
Absolutely. Like I think that my relationship with like those failures from the past, it's interesting how they change with maturity, because in the beginning, you better believe it was like, I want to prove them wrong. I want to prove those people wrong. And so to like get to be invited back to the show as like a guest performer, to perform my own song, to like show that like at that time I had honed my craft for several years and I was now ready for that stage. Unlike before, I really wasn't ready for it. But that's not how I saw it for a really long time. So for a while it was like, I'm going to prove that you were wrong about me. And I got that moment and I got to go back now multiple times to AGT. But with maturity and hindsight, it's now interesting to look back and be like, they weren't necessarily wrong. Like, I really wasn't that great that night, to be honest. And it's just that to be like, I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to grow. And and I've now earned my spot on every stage I go onto. And I really am a believer that you got to earn your stripes, but just because you face some rejection or embarrassment or you fall down in the beginning doesn't mean you're not going to be strong enough eventually to stand and hold your own.
So do you think that the sting of it is just because it's on such a large scale? So not even that the fact that maybe now you see that you weren't as good as where you could have been, but the fact that it was broadcasted to everybody is what kind of made it feel worse?
Absolutely. It was the fact that it was huge. 11 million people were watching live. That I don't think that even happens anymore nowadays. Like,
it's so rare.
Unless it's the Olympics. Like,
yeah.
That's very rare. But back then that was the kind of network viewership they would get. And so that having it broadcast so big, I think also the thing that made it stung so much was it was my first hello world. This is me. I'm Lindsey Stirling. I dance and play the violin. This is my craft. Nowadays, just say I was to have like I do. Like, you have disappointments, you have pitfalls, you have things that don't go the way you want. I have like all this history now to show to myself that like, hey, it's okay. Like, pick yourself up. You've got fans. The world has told you multiple times that you're good enough. Like, even if it's embarrassing, like, there's history behind me to show me that I can do it. Back then, there wasn't any. There was nobody besides like my family that had ever said like, we think what you're doing is pretty cool. And so like,
were they fully supportive?
They were. Like, thankfully, I had just the most supportive parents, and like my sister would come to all my gigs when we were in college. Like, so like, I had this supportive family, but other than that, there was no evidence outside to show that there was something of value here. It all had to come from within, and that's really scary when you're like, no one's ever proven to me that I do have value outside of myself and my family. So do I actually have what it takes? I don't know, was the honest answer. But my gut said I did. And so that was enough to like, thankfully keep me moving forward. And honestly, I'm not quite sure what made me strong enough to like rise from some of those early pitfalls when there was no proof yet that I could do it. Like I said, it's a lot easier to get yourself up once you've had like, you have a team around you and you have people and fans. Like, back then there was nobody. And I'm really grateful that my inner gut was like strong enough to make me be like, I can't quite give up on this yet. We got to go a little farther.
When did you feel like you really, not even like a made it moment, but like a, oh, I'm really doing it moment?
I think it was my first, oh my gosh, I really think this is working moment was actually when I had my first viral moment with an original song. Because I had viral moments in the past. My first one was the devastation of AGT. Went viral. Not the way you want to go viral. After that, though, I had done some originals on YouTube. And then I had done some covers. And the covers, like I did a Zelda medley. Went massively viral. That was like the first positive viral moment I had. But still, it wasn't like, it didn't feel quite like it was me. It was like, okay, they liked it because I'm dressed up like Link and I'm, playing their favorite franchise music. But when I had this song Crystallize, it was a dubstep song that I wrote. It was the style of music that I was like, this is me. And when that went viral, it had like 1 million views in less than a day, which was crazy. At the time, I think I only had about 100,000 like followers. And so that ratio is insane to get that kind of a view on YouTube back then. And I just remember being like, I think my life just changed. This is that was the moment where everything shifted and I suddenly became Lindsey Stirling, an artist, rather than Lindsey Stirling, a girl who plays violin on YouTube. Wow. And it was big. And I felt it when it happened. I knew.
Were you getting calls and emails of people?
I mean, it's not, I feel like that was right before the moment that I decided to take the risk to put on my first show. And I think it more than anything just made me be like, I can do this. And, you know, it was a while till I feel like there was such a connotation for the longest time about being a YouTuber where the music industry didn't take you seriously because nobody had really jumped off platform. So it took a while for like those calls to start coming in. But that's when I knew that it was going to work.
Were you trying to fight off that stigma at all, you think? Of not just being a YouTuber?
It was interesting because I was so proud to be a YouTuber. Like,
and I think that's what all of us are is like, yeah, we make and shoot our own content.
Yeah.
We put it out ourselves.
Right. There's a pride to it. And there was a community. So it's like I was really proud to be a YouTuber. But also I was very determined to show that we could stand in the real world and that it was a credible platform. If anything, even in my mind, I was like, it's even more credible because we did it ourselves, you know? So, I think that's one of the reasons it was so exciting when my touring took off and when I started winning awards against traditional label artists and I had no label. And I think that's why it was so exciting to me because I did feel like I had a little bit of a mission, not only for myself, but for my like YouTube comrades to be like, we are part of the entertainment industry. We are legitimate creators and artists. And so, yeah, I definitely had to like uphill battle against a stigma for a really long time. And it was really exciting to see it start to like cross over. Yeah.
What does your creative process now look like when you're writing new music? Do you write notes in like a notepad of like, what do you do?
Honestly, it's usually just creating through ear what I feel and like, I'll just play it and lock it into memory. And then, you know, but it's really fun. I love working with producers. That's the way I like to work. And so,
do you have to go in with a rough idea?
No, I usually go in like a blank slate. Yeah, which is kind of
scary.
Yeah. It took me a long time to like, because I used to like sit in my car before going in with the producer, even if I'd worked with them before, because I was just like, oh, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want them to think that I am a terrible artist. Because like some days you have creative bursts. Some days you have to accept that you're just going to write something bad and that's okay. And that it's not a waste of anybody's time. You're both accountable for the situation. It's not all on me. It's not all on them. It's a team. And nobody writes a hit every day, but it took me a while to like accept that and not be really hard on myself when I'd leave a session and be like, they probably think I suck and they wonder why I even got to this point, you know? Like I worked with that Lindsey Stirling once. Bummer. Like, but yeah, no, I go in and I work with producers. I go in like a blank slate. I usually have a concept. Like I have a vibe, a mood. Like sometimes I've gone in with a full like music video idea. Like I wrote a song called Shatter Me and I went in and I told the producer, today we're writing about a ballerina that is trapped in a music box and she realizes that she isn't actually being protected, but she wants to break free, you know? So like sometimes I go in with a really specific concept or like my whole Artemis album was based on a comic book that I had written. And so I went in with all these characters and ideas. Other times I go in with like, I just want to write something really hopeful today. Like I want to write the feeling of hope. So I always go in with like at least a thread, but no melodies. We come up with that. They start to make like chords of the track and then I start to play and it's almost like we're jamming in slow motion.
What is it? How long does it take you to finish that song? Do you try and knock it out that day?
Yeah, you always try to make like a demo by the day, like of here's, you know, hey, we got our verse, we got our pre, we got our chorus, like maybe a bridge, like, and that's enough to even know if you want to return to it. Cause usually I never finish a song in a day. Some people, I know they do, but it's enough to know, is this a seed that's worth like watering and growing and going back to it? Like, is it going to raise its hand when you've got your list of like my last album? I think I had 80 demos. I know that's a lot.
And how many songs made it to the final album?
14.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, personally, I don't know if this is how it is for everybody, but every album I have to write more songs to like my first album, there were 12 songs on it. I wrote 12 songs. They were the first 12 songs I ever wrote. And it's partially because I was paying the producer per song. I couldn't afford to have a miss. So they all made the album because I was like, I paid for them. But then when I wrote my second album, it took a few more because I was you don't want to repeat yourself. You're also trying to experiment and stretch your style a little bit. And then you've done 2 albums. And then on your 3rd album, you're like, well, now I need to make the style a little different. So you're experimenting even more. And then you're like, well, that sounds like that song from the past. So I feel like every album, it takes me more and more to like stretch the style, but also still sound like myself, but not repeat myself. So anyways, yeah, there was a lot on this last album, but it's always fun to go back through. And out of those day demos, you can see which ones raise their hand. And you're like, I see potential in you. You can be in the trash. Like, you're done. This one, yeah.
When you reflect on your debut album, how do you think you've grown as an artist?
I love my little debut album. It's funny because, I mean, one of the songs on there is still one of my biggest hits to this day, or hits. It's my fan favorite. But it's really funny because even I feel like there's a freedom in that album. I didn't actually know how to write music. I didn't know the like real tried and true formulas. I was just writing and doing what sounded fun. And there's a playfulness to that first album that actually when I wrote my last album, I really tried to recapture, with all the now things I know about writing and all the skills I've learned and the just like the sound I've developed, but then being like, I want to be free enough to like take some liberties. Like, it's so funny to listen to that first album, how sometimes there's random tangents that a song will go on that I would not normally think to do because it doesn't fit a formula. It's like, why did that go off and do that? I don't know, but it works. It's fun. And so my last album, I really took some of those liberties of like, know the rules, but be willing to like totally abandon the rules. And it was a playfulness that was really fun to like borrow from that first album.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your day-to-day like now? What are you spending your time on?
Right now I'm spending a lot of time like rehearsing for tours because this year is a little bit crazy. We're doing quite a variety of different types of shows. A lot of times it's like you have your tour and you prep for that and then you do it. But this time it's like we're doing these symphony shows, which have been really fun. I go in and I perform with a symphony. And so we've made like orchestral arrangements of all my music, which was really fun, and worked with conductors. But we're also doing like our other tour, like our full show with all the dancers and the aerial stuff. So I'm training for that as well. We're prepping for like a co-headline tour that's a rock show with a band called Hailstorm, which I love Hailstorm. But we're doing rock arrangements from our songs. So right now I am very focused on like all the different tours, prepping, rehearsing, training. After this, I go rehearse with my dancers, and then I have an aerial class tonight. So it's just like getting my body fit, ready. That's what I'm doing right now.
Are you trying to push yourself even further now with this aerial stuff?
Actually right now I'm just trying to get back in shape, because I took my body needed a break. And so I kind of took a break, and then it was like, it's amazing how fast you lose things, with your body skill. So it's been just a fun exercise to be like, let's get comfortable again. Let's feel confident. And then, but actually for this Christmas, I'm suddenly re-inspired now that I'm back on the apparatuses, and I'm like, yeah, I have some really fun ideas of how to like train and up the scale of the aerial stuff for Christmas.
Can every venue accommodate you for what you want to do in
We
your
actually,
shows?
we actually have to search pretty hard to make sure. And it's always such a bummer when you realize that a venue can't and it's booked and you're there and you're just like, dang it. Like, usually we know things ahead of time, but sometimes just because of tour routing, they're like, by the way, this certain show, you can't do your aerial stuff. And I always feel like bad because like some of the fans don't know what they're missing, but other fans, they're like, she didn't do it. Like, you know what I mean? And you always want to give like the full show. So it always really bums me out. But I remember, I always try to remind myself, I went to see the Backstreet Boys at the Hollywood Bowl. Loved the show. I'm a Backstreet Boys girl. And so
Are you going to the Sphere?
I want to.
It looks so good.
It looks so good. And I'm such a fan. Like, I know all, like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys. I was a Backstreet Boys girl. So yeah, I really want to go to the Sphere. But I just remember going to that show at the Hollywood Bowl. I had 0 complaints, 0 notes. My friends and I had the best night of our lives. And then I learned later that like they normally do like this levitating thing, but the Hollywood Bowl is a very specific venue that can't handle any like rigging. And I wasn't disappointed even when I found out like, oh, they didn't do that at my show. But I didn't care. I got to go see the Backstreet Boys and I had a great time. I had no complaints. And so I kind of try to remind myself of that when there's ever a show that outside of my control, we can't. But we really do try. I will say we really do try to make sure we get venues that can handle as much as we can do.
Who's your favorite Backstreet Boy?
AJ.
Oh, cool.
I love AJ.
Great. He came on the podcast once.
Really?
Very cool guy.
Oh, he's delightful.
As someone who's always reinventing yourself, is there any new tasks that you're trying to take on to even elevate your shows even more?
I mean, I'm really excited about rock music right now. I actually tried to make my last album a rock album. It didn't work out, and I just wasn't quite feeling inspired, so we ended up I switched styles. But now that we're doing a rock tour with Hailstorm, and I've been like arranging my music in rock form, I'm like, okay, I feel re-inspired, and I would love to like come out with a rock album for my next one. And so, and I think that brings a different type of skill, more so to my violin playing than anything. But I think it's also really fun to be like, oh my gosh, like, dancers, for example, the type of theatrical show I do isn't necessarily considered like what you see in a rock show, but I'm excited to like meld those two worlds. And like, I don't know, I just think it'd be a really fun challenge. It's something that we're doing this fall, so we'll see how the fans like it. But yeah, I'm excited about rock music.
Who else are you a fan of in the rock scene?
Well, I grew up being such a fan of Evanescence. Like, we got to tour with Evanescence years ago, and that was like a dream come true, and I've gotten to work with like rock artists for, on different collaborations, and it just seems to be such a natural fit. But yeah, and I grew up with I loved Weezer. That's more like the punk rock, or alternative rock, but like,
did you like Blink?
Oh yeah, I loved Blink. I remember I always felt so edgy as a teenager when I listened to Blink, because like I grew up in quite a household.
Yeah.
I was about to say conservative, but that means something different now.
Proper.
Yeah, proper. A little bit of a proper household. So like when I listened to Blink, I was like, I'm so edgy. Even Smash Mouth was like, oh, I'm crazy.
That's so funny. Well, if anyone wants to see you on tour, where are your next dates coming up?
Well, we're going to Mexico really soon. We're also doing more of a Northern America Canadian run with Hailstorm. And then I'm pretty sure at Christmas we'll be jumping around the States.
Is it really challenging going into a different country as a touring artist?
Yes. Yeah. It's just always a little bit different. Is
it crossing the border, or is it just different like rules? Or what is it?
I would say you just kind of don't always know what you're going to get in terms of like, a lot of times you have to, unless you're taking your full tour and bussing around Europe, but when you go to Mexico, you have to fly every day. So you can't bring all of your equipment with you. You have to rely a lot on what the venue, if they're able to find all the exact things you wanted.
Right. So they could be like, hey, we don't have that piano you wanted. Sorry.
That happens. Yeah, and your keyboard player has to figure it out. Or like there was a time we rented a hoop, and they were like, that's the size, and we're like, that's not the size. This is not the same size. So you have to just be flexible and be like, okay, I'm gonna make it work. So when you can't bring all your own stuff, it does make it just a little extra like fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But we always make it work.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you.